Hi guys, welcome to module 3, which is on building connection. So to start off this module, hopefully you've all watched the link to the clip that I sent you in an email. And I guess what I want you to kind of think about in the back of your head is, did anything stand out to you in that video clip? Maybe take a few minutes now just to write down a few answers in your workbook, and we'll have a talk about it when we have our Zoom meeting. What stood out to you during watching the clip? So the next thing we're going to talk about are some different models of communication. So some of the models of communication, you'll see we have some diagrams in your manual. The first one we wanted to talk about is the transmissional model. So you can see in your manual, there's a little picture of the people here, and this type of communication, it describes communication as linear. So it's a one-way process in which the sender intentionally transmits a message to a receiver who is the target or the end point of the ongoing process. So the receiver may successfully receive and understand the message, or they may not. So thinking about just a regular transmission model, what might some of the pitfalls be of this particular type of model? So maybe pop me on pause and just use that little space there to write down your responses to that question. The second model that we wanted to talk about is the transactional model of communication. So you'll see in that diagram, there's the communicator, and then the communicator, and there are different things that are going on to influence whether or not that communication is received. So it's a process in which two communicators interact and create a relationship. So both parties are simultaneously senders and receivers as we communicate through our body language as well as our words. So I suppose thinking about this clip right now, what I'm doing to you, you could say is a transmissional model. I am the person, I am giving you the information, and you are receiving the information. If I had people in the background, or if you have people in the background, if you can hear noises going on, if we were in a two-way conversation, it would probably be more of a transactional model. So I think it's really important to remember that our communication is influenced by our social, relational, contextual, and cultural influences. So everything matters in communication. Your body language, your accent, your culture, your past, your family, all sorts of things interplay during communication. And it's certainly no different with mentoring. Like we mentioned in the generational poverty section, or we will mention in the generational poverty section, there are we all kind of have filters that cover us that make communication very diverse. Things that I say can be misinterpreted, or things that I hear can be misinterpreted. So going on to the second point, the importance of good communication, part of the reason of having this little section in our training is to really make sure that we are having good communication with our mentees and with New Mornings, with the school and with the staff. So why is good communication so important? I'll just give you a few minutes now to write in your manuals why you think it's important to have good communication. And the one after that, obviously, actually all of them, you are free to go down and answer those questions. So what does good communication look like? What are 3 messages that you would like to communicate with your mentee? And how could you communicate the following kinds of things to your mentee? Might like to take 5 minutes to go through those questions now. And do remember that when we have our Zoom meeting, I will be looking for these responses. So you can pop me on pause and go through and fill those questions in. So thinking about some of the answers to those questions, I'd like to move on to what are some barriers of communication or of good communication. If the lines of communication get compromised or are disturbed or crossed over without intention, so I might say something and another person might take it the wrong way, or any type of barrier like that, what type of blocks can actually cause that and make that happen? So there is a list of potential barriers to communication in your manuals, such as lack of attention, time, and interest. Following your own agenda in a conversation. We've probably all had those conversations with people where you're talking and they're kind of following you as you talk and they're interrupting you and they cut you off and go off on their own tangent. Closed body language can really be a barrier to communication. Some people, without realizing, quite often they will fold their arms and they don't intentionally mean to look closed. They might be cold or they might feel insecure or they might feel shy, but that might be interpreted as hostile or disinterested body language. The use of jargon or of adult language. So some people just use a lot of words and they use a lot of lengthy words to describe things, and particularly working with kids, it's really important to keep it simple. Sometimes differences in perception and different viewpoints can actually be barriers to communication. Physical and cognitive disabilities are definitely barriers to communication, as well as closed questions. How was your day? How are you feeling? Did you have a nice piece of cake? Those sorts of things are just not going to open up communication to be rich. So as a mentor, it's really important to remember that it's your job to minimize these barriers and be mindful of your own presence and of the placement and position and posture in conversations. So think about how you can be to be the most open and receptive adult for your mentee. Being really intentional in your conversations with your mentee, with your tone and with your body language, will make your mentoring sessions much more enjoyable and much more higher engagement from your mentee. If they feel like you really want to be there, generally that will be reciprocated in your mentee. So some of the filters that can happen in communication, you can see there's a section in our manual where we talk about the filters in communication. So for the message to effectively reach its target, so when we go back to that transmissional model of communication, there are so many factors at play. So a sender's mood and the meaning they attach to the words will be different to that of the receiver. The sender's filters include things such as words, gestures, voice, tones, facial expression, and they have to be received in the same way. And you can see the filters there in your manual are vast. So assumptions, values, body language, time. So the time, every wife knows that when your husband walks in the door after a long day at work, that is not the time to talk to them about all your issues that you had with a friend's mum at the gym. So timing is really important. If you're not a morning person, talking first thing in the morning about philosophical issues is probably not going to be something that you will really enjoy. Stereotypes, even using derogatory language, talking to someone and saying, I met someone and they were such a bogan. Things like that can immediately put barriers to communication and make you as the receiver feel offended on the behalf of the other person. Mood, if you're feeling really low and are in a low mood, and if you're feeling really sad, the way you receive good news is not going to be received as joyfully as the person saying it, because your mood is just low. Power and status can definitely influence communication. So a principal talking to a grade 2 student is probably going to be different to a grade 2 student talking to another grade 2 student. Culture, tiredness and focus, so how much energy you have, distractions, whether or not you're half looking at the person or whether you, oh, hang on a second, I'll just let me, oh wait, hello, classic example. And distractions with the phone and screens are probably our biggest distraction. Every single time we go to a cafe or out for a meal, it is difficult to find the people who are not on their phones in opposed to the ones who are. It has become a huge thing. So distractions are big. Past hurts are huge. So your mentee might find it really difficult to relate to a male mentor because of the past hurts of a male figure in their life. Socioeconomic status, it's the way we relate to people. So within certain economic cultures, relating and communicating looks different. So it's really important to be aware of that, and we will unpack that a little bit more in the generational poverty module. Language is different, gender causes difference, social status and where you stand. I'd probably even say like education, position of power, career, age, self-esteem and personal opinions. And there's probably lots and lots more. Communication, honestly, when you think about it, it is a miracle we ever communicate anything to anybody. And there's so many ways to communicate now. There's text messages, and no amount of emojis can sometimes communicate the right message. And I think in lots of ways, emojis have made things more complicated. And if you're not sure what emojis are those small little smiley faces that you can send to people in a text message or an email. So a winking face in the emoji language is very different to a winking face in the regular language. So it's a complicated process. Text and font and language and email have made things even more complicated. Not to mention the secret language of the younger generation where they use different words to communicate different things. So thinking about those filters, and maybe even some of the ones I've mentioned, put me on pause and think about which of the filters do you think might be relevant to you and how might they impact your communication with your mentee. So have a minute now to fill that section in. So now we're going to move on to pretty much my favourite thing in our training. So PACE was developed by a therapist and a psychologist, and I think he's a doctor or a professor, Dan Hughes. So Dan Hughes has worked with many children in foster situations and often teenagers who had been deemed too violent and too unpredictable or dangerous in their behaviour that they were moved to group homes. So I suppose children that were kind of the edge of the edge in regards to vulnerability and violence and vulnerable. So when Dan Hughes was creating PACE, he started to think to himself, well, how did I relate to my children? What sorts of things did I do to help my own children overcome issues, or how did I relate to them? And that's when he created PACE. So PACE stands for playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. PACE encourages spontaneity, a sense of curiosity and exploration. PACE promotes social engagement and it builds attachment, which we talked about in the second module, in a safe and a trusting way. So PACE is not only a way of relating to a child, it's a way of creating neuro pathways that will increase your attachment and their attachment to you. An adult with a compassionate state of mind towards a child can utilise PACE to send calming, non-verbal messages to the child's amygdala facilitating a switching process in the child's brain from defensiveness to engagement. Now, I don't know about you, but when I read that, I am filled with a lot of joy. So, PACE is something that, when used, even non-verbally, you can switch the child's brain over from feeling defensive to feeling warm and engaged. So it really is a secret formula for everything we do at New Mornings with Mentoring. So what is it? Playfulness. Playfulness is probably my favourite. I'd say curiosity is my favourite, but playfulness is definitely pretty high up there. So as adults, we often engage with children very differently, or we ought to engage with children very differently with how we engage with adults. I'm sure if I walked into the office and said, "Hi, Pam, and how are you today? Did you have a good day? Yeah? Was everything nice? That's good. Oh, don't tell me." I'm sure Pam would look at me and say, is there something wrong with you? Or maybe she'd say, Penny's just having another day with Penny. So the reason we do that is because their brains are different and because they're children. It's just how they are, and they love play. Play is their learning. So if we were to sit down with a child and solely focus on conversation, they would not remain engaged with us and they would be distracted. But instead, if we involve children talking to them through play, using toys and craft and games, chances are we have a lot more chance of engaging with them on a personal level. Storytelling is also a wonderful way of engaging their imagination and just igniting something within them in a really meaningful way. So through play, we can engage the child expressively using facial expressions, voice and body to join in the affective and creative life of the child. So playful is fun, it's light, it's hopeful, open and spontaneous. Being playful means that you are embracing moments that are spontaneous, joyful, fun, and deeply connecting. They are deeply satisfying and they are in the present. They carry us along into the future and become part of our shared path. So, playfulness is something to do to help children feel calm and relaxed. So through play, we can expressively engage our mentee. We can use facial expressions and tone of voice and body language. It stimulates the prefrontal cortex and it can interrupt a child's feeling of sadness and feeling weighed down. So when you're laughing, you're not experiencing pain. So play is like, some of you might be sitting there thinking it's all well and good for you to say, Penny. Obviously, you quite like being playful, but I find it really embarrassing to be playful. And I haven't had children or my grandchildren are all grown up. I don't know how to do this. Help. And if that's the case, there are some really easy things you can do. When you read a book, it's as simple as having a melodic voice. So rather than reading the book like, as adults, we engage with children differently than we would with other adults. Just add some tone to your voice. As adults, we engage with children differently than we would other adults. Just try to make it melodic. A sense of humour is also really important. If you find it really hard to do that, you could find a really cool joke, tell them a joke, get them to tell you a joke. So you will get used to it. Having a sense of silliness is also really good. Being comfortable and being able to laugh at yourself and just allow laughter to happen as it happens, also really important. So playfulness is a lot of fun. I've had a mentor who was just at this point in the training, she was very nervous. She said, I'm happy to do the other letters, but I just can't do playfulness. And so we talked a lot and I did a fair bit of role playing with her. And my goodness, she got there. She really did. And playfulness looked different for her than it does for me. Everybody has their own version of playfulness. Everybody is their own person. their own childhood is different to mine. And the wonderful thing is that once she learnt a few foundational kind of playful things, she actually invited her mentee to share some of the things that she did as a child. They read The Secret Garden together, they watched the movie together, they went on walks together, they did craft. But it was the mentor had, she actually said after her 2 years of mentoring, I feel so blessed because I've had a chance to do some of the fun things from my childhood and be a kid again. So I just think it's such a special thing. So that's the first one, PACE. Second letter A stands for acceptance. So acceptance is a tricky one. And as I talk about acceptance, there'll probably be a really large portion of you that will be thinking, I can do acceptance. Acceptance is really, really easy. But when you're actually with a mentee, accepting some of their circumstances and accepting who they are and how they are, it can be jolly hard. So accepting your mentee completely is pivotal to building connection and sustaining a positive relationship. So that means accepting all their ideas, their feelings, and their thoughts. So even if you don't like what they're feeling or what they're thinking, it's really important to create a sense that you still accept them. If your mentee feels rejected by you or feels judged by you, it will really damage your connection. Now, sometimes during mentoring, you might feel disappointed by one of their thoughts or reactions or values. And if that happens, it's really important to be aware that you're finding it hard. Rather than kind of pretending that you don't, just allow yourself, accept what you're feeling. I'm finding this challenging because she's being quite racist and I don't like racism, but I need to accept her for who she is. So it's really important. Acceptance is a really important aspect of PACE, as you'll see as a little bit more in your manual. So by accepting that you will, I guess, accept all their feelings and thoughts and ideas, this would hopefully lead a child to learn that they are not their behaviour. Therefore, they can view their behaviour as separate from themselves and become more open in, who they are and how they are. So acceptance is a really important way for them to see, even though my mentor didn't agree with what I did, they accepted me anyway. And that can just be such a profound thing for a student or a mentee that has been so condemned such a long time. And as you see in your manual, Personal Values Under Construction, you will have moments where your values are challenged. So you will have moments where you might feel stressed, argumentative, and you don't know what to do. I think that's just so important to be aware that your personal values are being compromised. But it's just about not judging them and not ridiculing them within that environment. So curiosity, that's our next letter. As you'll see, we have a little curious George down there. Let's get curious. So curiosity, I find a very easy trait. It's something I just do naturally, and some of us do much more than others. I know at my work, it's very easy to be curious, but sometimes it can frustrate people when I'm constantly curious. So curiosity is about wondering with the young person or wondering with the young person around meaning and reasons behind their behaviours and their circumstances. So instead of, if a young girl comes to you and says something like, I messaged my friend and I told her I hated her, and now I'm really angry with her because she spread rumors about me at school. Instead of saying something like, well, it didn't sound like that was really a wise thing to do in your friendship, maybe that's why she's spreading the rumors. Saying something like that, you're actually telling the mentee what to do, and you're also sort of judging them for making a poor decision. Whereas if you were to say something to the mentee like, huh, so you sent her a message saying you hated her. Yeah, okay. I wonder why you did that. I wonder why you did that. It actually causes the mentee to start wondering as well. So it's about inquiring with a non-judgmental attitude, kind of making guesses as to what is happening so you can work out the answer together. She might come back and say, yeah, I don't know why I did that. I don't know why I did that. I just wanted something to happen. But I don't really hate her. And now I feel really sad because everyone believes this rumor. So it can actually cause the mentee to think, and it's a wonderful thing if you can have a student actually to think about their own behaviour instead of lecturing them, which is automatically you'll get walls up. So yeah, inquiring with a non-judgmental attitude. Being curious also demonstrates acceptance of the person and can help the young person to teach us what they're thinking. Being curious together helps the young person to feel heard and understood. So if you actually wonder why they did something or wonder what it felt like or anything wondering, you're actually saying back what they told you, so they feel heard and valued. So there's a clip that I've sent you in an email from Brene Brown on empathy, which is probably my number one most favourite clip in the world. Have a watch of that if you haven't already, and we'll move on to the final letter of PACE, which is, in fact, empathy. So empathy is a gift or a skill of having a felt sense of the other. So actively experienced and communicated. It's feeling with another person, feeling compassion for their struggles or their suffering. Empathy also demonstrates a sense of acceptance. You cannot be empathetic while at the same time brushing off somebody else's pain. So you're accepting that what they're feeling is real. Statements such as, I'm so sorry that happened, or that must have been really hard, show empathy, being mindful of not overemphasizing. Over time, empathy will build trust with a young person to acknowledge feelings of fear, sadness, hurt, and shame without fearing judgment. But empathy is super easy. All empathy is about is just being with the child, with their emotions, without trying to fix it, without trying to offer advice, without trying to suggest anything or offer any unnecessary comfort, like it'll be okay, or hang in there, or don't worry. It doesn't involve any of that. It's just, I'm so sorry this has happened to you. I'm just so sorry. Our number one need is validation, and children are no different. We all need to be seen and to be heard, and empathy is just the best way to offer that to a mentee. So you can see that we have some demonstrations in your manual around curiosity. So we've got it all there for you. And for sitting with empathy. So applying the PACE model, it might feel overwhelming, and you might think, I just have no idea where to start. I don't know how to do this. I've been doing this for 3 years, so I do it probably without thinking. We have a scenario in your manuals, and now I would like you to go through it have a read of this scenario. Now, just so you're aware, it could be considered as a confronting scenario. It's a made-up scenario, but it's definitely based on real life circumstances. What I'd like you to do is go through your initial reactions. What are the very first things that you think about as this scenario unfolds and as you read it? Your thoughts, your feelings, your physical sensations, anything else. How do you imagine yourself responding? What would you say? What would you do? What might your body language show? Any other responses? And then we want you to apply PACE to this particular scenario. So I'd like you to do that. Now, we will be talking about this in our Zoom meeting, so it is very important that you have this written down. And then we will be able to have a conversation about how you went. And I have just seen that we have got a review of the scenario there if you're really, really stuck and you don't know how to apply PACE to the scenario. But hopefully you'll come up with some of your own ideas as you go through PACE and that scenario. And we will probably be doing some PACE role plays when we catch up face to face, because PACE is very, very important. And I'm still talking to mentors who have been mentoring for 3 years about PACE and how to apply it. So the sooner you learn, the better it will be for your mentee. So that is the end of our second module, and hopefully you are going well and you're feeling positive about the content, and I will see you all soon.